Hi everyone. Good evening to you. I'm not going to be able to make these YouTube videos every week, but some weeks I will, and I like to stay in touch with you. And then also, too, I'd like you to know who I am. So if you run into me at WCCC or elsewhere, we can say hello. I was over in the BIC building, the Business and Industry Center here recently, and ran into the student and said, "Hey, Mr. Ritzik, how are you?" And I said, "Hey," and he gave me his name, but I don't get to see every student, online. But like I said, at least you'll get to know a little bit more about me. I told you previously that I've taken a number of classes here at WCCC, more than 20. And I really like being a student, learning. Like I took a human growth and development. I've taken abnormal psychology, but I've taken a number of computer science courses, the CPT 150, 151, 190. I've taken a Visio course. So I've taken a number of different classes. And one of the other advantages of working at a college, but working at most places these days, is many employers will pay you, or not pay you, but to pay to go to school. And from 2007 to 2010, I went back to school at Chatham University. And so I got a master's in professional writing. My other degree is in the teaching of writing. And but anyhow, I met really some great people through the online program there, and I found it very, very enjoyable as a whole. But what I really liked about online classes, to be perfectly honest with you, is it fit within my schedule. I every semester, fall, spring, and summer, I teach 7 classes, and you typically will have, say, like 150 students. And then I am a parent. I have 2 sons, and do activities with my wife. I help my mother. I travel. I'm involved in the faculty union at the community college, and I'm involved in a number of different committees. And so I have a pretty, busy day as far as that goes, and I'm involved in some statewide committees. And so for me, I didn't really want to drive to, say, like Pitt 2 nights a week, and then it takes you an hour and a half to go each way. You have to find parking and all that. So I enjoyed online classes. But the disadvantage of it is when you're in a classroom, of course, if somebody asks a question, then everybody else gets to hear it. And then also, too, if you have problems or questions or issues, then of course, everybody gets to hear what the instructor has to say about it. When I was at Chatham University, I had courses like in business writing, technical writing, which was great, but also like medical writing. And then I had a web page writing course, which I found a little bit difficult. I wish I would have had that one in class. But this technical communication class, in my opinion, is a very good one to have online because you get to practice your email, you get to practice document format, and all that. Now, this week I did send you, everyone in this class, this technical communication sample assignments. Those were actually mailed out today, Tuesday. So, you will be getting them here probably by the end of the week, but perhaps even sooner. So I like to just send those out for students to have something to refer to, and they have different examples. Most of them are a few years old, but they're basically very, very helpful. I wanted to go over a couple of key elements of this book. There is a planning form in the book, and it's on page 39, and that same planning form is also in the very back part of the book. I sometimes photocopy that and use it for different types of items that I am doing. And so for this class, it's actually a good idea, like when you're doing your consumer report or your written instructions or other documents that you have to do. I would encourage you to use that. Also, too, there's a chapter in this book on creating web pages. And these days, with some of the software, that is available, it's not as hard as it once was to create a web page. I'm trying to find the darn planning guide that they had. I just had it here a minute ago. Sorry about that. But the planning guide is on page 529, but it's a web page, a web planning type of form. So, like I said, if you're designing a web page or whatnot, that's a good resource to refer to. In chapter 2, I only wanted to really just talk about a few chapters in our book, but in chapter 2, they talk about, and if you would just refer to page 38, why am I writing this document? What response do I want? And so on. And then, even they get into a couple of more points there, like on 41, analyzing your readers. And the thing about that's a little bit different for technical communication, if you look back to page 39, you can write to managers, experts, operators, your general readers. And in some documents, you might actually have to write to all of them. So in different parts, you're going to have to write for different ways to different readers. And so that's something that I wanted to point out. And then they also had 42 ways to understand readers, and they get into some of those. And then, of course, like I said, with different types of readers on 44, managers, experts, operators, and general readers. For the most part, in email, letters, and other documents, you really want to avoid using jargon or technical language because sometimes it's not clearly understood by everyone. In this class, when I have it in class, we go over to the nursing simulation lab. And we do an assignment where the faculty over there are doing a presentation to students, and they have a simulation person who's like a 19-year-old juvenile who has diabetes, and his mother, who is one of the nursing faculty. And so they explain to the mother in lay terms how what it means to have diabetes, that you can't eat too high of carbohydrates and you have to watch, your sugar intake, and your carbohydrate level can't get too high, and, just factors like that. And then when they went through it the second time, they would use like hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia, subcutaneous, which means that you only have to give an injection into a certain number of layers, like, just into the fat. You don't have to go into like intramuscular as the whole ways in. It's a deeper shot. But, they have all that type of terminology and like sliding scale coverage. So if you eat, too many carbohydrates or whatnot, or, if your blood sugar level goes too high, they have to make some adjustments. And then even, they use glucometer, or they use One Touch, which is the name of a company that produces those. But what I found out that, which really I did not know related to the medical profession, I thought like white blood cells or red blood cell count or whatever, it was all the same. So like if your white blood cell count, say, is at 800, you have an infection. But what I didn't realize is it is normed. So, for example, in southwestern Pennsylvania, it may be different than in central West Virginia, based on the population, based on the age, based on the people that have heart disease or diabetes or whatnot. So they norm it, which I did not know. And the other part that I did not know is from hospital to hospital, they might call something something different. And so, like, so in one hospital they might use a diabetic, to measure your blood sugar. They might call it a glucose reader, but in some places they call it a One Touch. So what was interesting is that you learn that the jargon is a little bit different. And I also realized too, I had a student in class this summer, and he was a petroleum engineering major from Penn State. And if you use SW, SO is saturation of water. SW, or saturation of oxygen. SW is saturation of water. So that's for Marcellus Shale. And, so if you're writing to another petroleum engineer, of course, they would know that. Or if you were writing to another medical professional, they would know QID means 4 times a day. Or they would know what subcutaneous or hypoglycemia, diaphoresis, which is extreme sweating. But as a matter of course, the best way in technical writing is to use simpler language. If you do have to use jargon, the best way is to explain it in the context of the sentence, or you can use like a simile or a metaphor to compare it to something else so the person understands it. If you have a huge array of jargon or technical terms, you can actually add an appendix to the document like you will with your consumer report if you need to, because some people do certain types of products that most people don't know about, such as a muzzle loader or a paintball gun, which most people aren't familiar with those as well. And so there's certain terminology that you would have to be aware of. So anyhow, chapter 2 is, like I said, it's a really pretty good chapter. Chapter 3 talks a little bit about collaboration and planning. And so, like I said, they have those planning guides available in this class. And they talk about some of the tools that you can use, for collaborating. These days, also, more people are storing documents electronically. Like one of the deans here at the WCCC, he has Dropbox. And so he also gives access to his secretary and a couple other people in the area that he works, and they all can look at the same documents. So he can access them from his cell phone, from his iPad, from his college computer, from his notebook, and so on. So those are all available. And when I was at Chatham University, we use like this place called the Blog Space. It's like by Google. And so, people that had permission could go on and edit documents. And boy, that was an easier way, to do it. So there's a number of ways that you can collaborate. My brother Tom works for a health insurance company, and, they have this virtual private network, VPN, and you have to log in. But, different documents that they work on, they actually did a white paper recently, and that's a paper where they're creating a statement about, he actually works related to health savings accounts. And so a number, like 15 people worked on this document, but they had it at the company site where people could work on it. And so that's common. So in this class, we use like the discussion board, but more and more companies use a discussion or like a wiki, which is really a knowledge base, or they might have a composing space where people work together. I can guarantee you at Microsoft now, they're working on Windows 8 because people are complaining they have used Windows 7 or Windows XP. It's very easy to use, but this Windows 8 confuses them. And so they're trying to come up with solutions to that particular issue. So they got, like I said, they've gone through some different tools and so on. The really key point that I wanted to talk about is in chapter 4, particularly organizing, information as far as that goes. And you're going to notice on page 93, to repeat key information. Tactical communication is redundant and it is repetitive because not everyone will want to or need to read the document from beginning to end. And so that's why you have to repeat key points as you go along. It is never a problem to repeat. And if you notice on page 94, they have the ABC format: the abstract, the body, and the conclusion. Whether you're writing an email, a memorandum, a letter, a report, or whatnot, you can do different types. You will be using the ABC format consistently throughout the course. So I just wanted you to be aware of that, and so they do mention that as far as as it goes. Even on page 100 and 101, they talk about paragraph length and so on. And then if you use 5 or more points, you number them. And if you use fewer than 5, then you can just bullet them. So they go through that as well. And on page 92, this is a really, really critical point, and it's the one that I wanted to get to. They mentioned the top-down format. And basically, um, readers want the results placed first, and this is mentioned at the bottom of 92, followed by details to support your main points, and then you give your, your conclusion. So basically on 92 and 93, they talk about the top-down format. And again, it's a redundant, repetitive approach to technical communication. But even if you're writing an email, at the beginning, you can list the key points you're going to be covering. And then in the body, you can develop them. And then in the conclusion, you finish them off. Now, in the conclusion, one thing that I always do is if I'm sending something to someone and I want a response, then I'll say, respond to me, please respond to me in a week. Or if it's only informational, I will tell them that. But you have to let the person know. But if you notice, like it says, it repeats, talks about, repeating key points. And please make sure to read from 94 to 97 more about the ABC format in this particular book. If you go through, and we'll go and look at some of these examples just to point this out in action, go to page 182 and see where they have, like a memorandum, and that's sort of a memo report. Notice, too, they have Ralph Simmons, call him a technical manager, and then they have an RS after his name. If you want to initial electronically that you, in fact, are sending the document, you can use a capital R, you can, your initials, you can bold those like that. I use Lucinda handwriting, but if you're sending a memorandum like that electronically, that's the way to do it. Also, as well, you notice they have the introduction and then the heading, the problem, time spent, the solution, in-house editor, and the conclusion. But they do follow the ABC format. And if you notice as well with a memorandum, notice that the D, the T, the R, and the N, they all line up at the same tab stop. With my subject lines, I always use all capitals and all bold. You're not required to, but that's a suggestion that I have for you. Now, if you notice on page 185, Dear Reverend Davidson, this is a letter, but again, it follows this ABC format. And they have the person's name. And if you have a title or whatnot, you can certainly put that. But, or if you have any certifications or, and so on, because some of the nursing faculty here, they're like RN, MSN, nurse practitioner or whatever, but they have those listings. And then notice too, like on page 185, see how they have NS in capitals and then MH in small letters. MH is the typist and NS is the originator. So like at WCCC, Dr. Abera, who's the president, when he signs letters, and you can see at the bottom it has DO, so Daniel Abera / and it'll say KG, Karen Gandy, who's his admin assistant, and she'll have it as small letters. So, that's how you will do it. And notice as well, they have a memo on 188. And then even more elaborate, they have one on page 190. When you work, you're going to have to do reports, but there is such a thing as a memo report or a letter report. Those can be, 2 pages or 3 pages as far as that goes. So I was on a committee recently, and we were looking at food service vendors and potential people that would come into WCCC and be our vendor for food. And so we did a short memo. I was involved a couple years ago on Title IX, like gender equity. And so myself and the athletic director and somebody else had to write, these are the number of male sports we have at WCCC, these are the number of female sports, and so on. But we had to produce a brief memo for something. I wanted to mention to you as well, and I mentioned this the other day, but this is really helpful. If you notice in Chapter 8, how, like, for example, on page 242, that they have a document, and then of course, like, they have the abstract of the body at the top, equipment, process, and so on. The equipment and process are the main points, and then the conclusion is there at the end. But the one that I was referred to, which is really, really good example on 244, is this one is first written as in paragraph format, and then it's revised and it's written more in action format. And notice that they use commands such as confirm, call, complete, make, place, and so on. So it's clearer as far as what they want you, to do. And what I also wanted to refer you to a little bit more is you can see, like, in chapter 11, reports for information and analysis. You've done lab reports. This one is an equipment evaluation on page 396. That's very common. Incident reports, accident reports, all those types of issues, those are much, much more common. And just the last one to, refer you to is more formal types of reports that you will do for documents that you will write. Like even the example on 452, proposal of window restoration for Silver Rush Museum, that's a good example. And then also, if you go back, and this is the last area that I wanted to hit on, 334, this is what's a formal report. So typically a formal report, you'll write it with a group of people, and often 5 or more people. But if you notice on 334, there's a cover, or there's a title page, and then there's in this particular case, there's a letter of transmittal, or sometimes they have a memo of transmittal. You notice with the title page, or table of contents rather, that they have they break it down into headings and subheadings and so on, and they're more detailed. Instead of calling it an abstract, they call it an executive summary. And typically, they can be a few paragraphs, but sometimes they can be several pages long. And then they have the introduction. But if you notice as you go through, they have headings and subheadings throughout the document, and you can follow that. They often use tables and charts or data, and then they have conclusions and recommendations. And you'll notice that even on 347, they have appendices and so on. And then typically they'll have like a references or a works cited page. Right across from WCCC is Cherry Creek, which is that golf course. At one time, it was a farm. There's the farmhouse is still there, and so is the silo. But the developer that did that, they had to write a report, and they had to submit it to the Department of Environmental Protection, whatever it is for the state, but also Hempfield Township. There's a wastewater corporation in Westmoreland County. You have to have a plan for water runoff and all that. And then you also have to have a plan as far as how you're going to deal with wetlands, or what green space you're going to have. And if you notice Cherry Creek, that they have a marsh area, and then they also have some green space and woods. And so they had to hire somebody to do all this, and then to write this report, and then to take it on through. And so typically, that's what happens. But that's a longer formal report. And here at WCCC, I'm involved with a longer formal report. And what it is middle states. And every 10 years, Westmoreland County Community College gets evaluated, and we get accredited. And so if you're accredited, of course, you get money from the federal government, from the state, from the county, and all that. And so it's very, very important. So myself and another person, Sylvia Detter, and about 8 other people, we did 2 standards. And our standards were ethical behavior, and the other one had to do with academics. And so we had to do some research, and then we had to submit our document. It was about 6 or 7 pages, but there's 14 standards altogether, so these other subgroups had to submit. And now what they're doing is they're getting it into a rough draft, and then they'll smooth it out a little bit, and then the consultant comes through to look at it first in October, and then in spring a whole group of people will come in and evaluate and look at this report, but also analyze the college with our library, with our computer services, our IT, our different programs in nursing and culinary arts, our administration, our faculty. I mean, you get examined all across the board, but that's a longer formal type of report. The two biggest things that I'm going to tell you in this course is number one, your sentence level writing is really important, so important, because you have to have clear, crisp, sharp sentences. And then number two, formatting is important. And then obviously you're following that ABC format, abstract, body, and conclusion, and using a redundant, repetitive approach to writing. With discussion board 1 and 1A, especially discussion board 1A, I'm going to have you revise and tighten up some sentence level writing, and that'll be the last point that I wanted to mention, is writing clear sentences, which starts on page 636 to 638, and then being concise, that goes from 638 to 643, and even accuracy in writing from 643 to 644, and active and passive voice on 644 and 645. So I'd like you to get the maximum out of your textbook, but I also, I taught this class for a number of years. We're at the 8th edition of this textbook, and I remember using, I think, the 2nd edition. So we've been with this book for a long, long time, and I like it because it's 17 chapters. It's enough for a semester, and it's technical communication, a practical approach. So hopefully you will have some benefit from this class. And I typically tend to see students that I've had in the past that have found this class to be pretty useful overall. So thanks. I just wanted to give you an update.